After we chant the mantras, somebody removed the board after. Then remove the board because it blocks the deities. You can't see the deities. You done the player? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jai Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jai Jasodanandana Raja Jananjaya Jasodanandana Raja Jananjaya Jamuna Tira Shahiham Jamuna Tira Havana Chahari Jamuna Jaya Radham Madhavam Kunja Vihari Jaya Radham Madhavam Kunja Vihari Jai Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Raja Jananjaya Jasodanandana Raja Jananjaya Jamuna Tira Havana Chahari Jamuna Jamuna Tira Havana Chahari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Srila Prabhupada ki Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15. The Pandavas retire timely, verses 47 and 48. So that's 47 on the board. Tadhyanodriktaya bhaktya Tadhyanoyadriktaya bhaktya Visudadishyana pare Tasmin narayana pade Ekanta matta yogatim Tadhyanodriktaya bhaktya Visudadishana pare Tasmin narayana pade Ekantan matta yogatim Tadhyanodriktaya bhaktya Visudadishana pare Tasmin narayana pade Ekanta matta yogatim Ladies? Any ladies? No? Okay. Let's see. Tat, that, dhyana, positive meditation, utriktaya, being freed from, bhaktya, by a devotional attitude, visuddha, purified, dishana, by intelligence, pade, unto the transcendence, tasmin, in that, Narayana, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, pade, unto the lotus feet, ekantamataya, of those who are fixed in the Supreme, who is one, gatim, destination, avapu, attained, duravapam, very difficult to obtain, te, by them, asabi, by the materialists, visaya atmabi, absorbed in material needs, viduta, washed off, kalmasa, material contamination, stanam, abode, virajena, without material passion, atmana eva, by the self-same body, he, certainly. So now we're hearing about the Pandavas in their final part of their journey towards the spiritual world. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional service, they, the Pandavas, attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayan Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed off of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. Purport. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Srila Sanatana Goswami, in his Hari Bhakti Vilas, says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahmana by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahmana, even without change of body, or in going back to Godhead without a change of body. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he, used in this connection, positively affirms this truth, and there is no doubt about the factual position. In the Bhagavad Gita 14:26, also affirms this statement by Srila Jiva Goswami, when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically, without deviation, can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contaminations of the three modes of material nature. And when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced, by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, without a change of body, as we have already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. That last sentence was like a paragraph. Om Gyantimirandasya Girajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya Sitarine Panchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse is not quite. Yes, it's almost the last verse in a series of verses which describes the perfection of achievement by the Pandavas and their going back home, back to Godhead. It says they went back in the self-same body. So what Jiva Goswami is saying is that even in this life, one can reach perfection even while they still are existing in their present body. Sometimes people think that you have to give up this body before you reach perfection. And that is usually the normal case. The average practitioner of devotional service does have to give it this body and attain their spiritual body before they can attain perfection. But here it also mentions that of those who have a certain power in their devotional service so great that even in the present existence, in the body that they have, they can reach perfection. That is very good in terms of, it gives consolation to the idea that yes, I can make perfection even while I'm still here. But here we see the word washed off. It's been mentioned a couple times. that to live in the material world means to be dirty. It's a place of dirt. The contaminations of the three modes of material nature. The more deeper the modes, the more the contamination. Just like if you work in a factory, you might get very dirty. If you work in a grocery store, you might get less dirty. If you work in an office, you may be not so dirty. But in any way, wherever you are in the material world, there's always some type of what we call contamination. And what is the washing process? The washing process is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam, to hear and chant the glories of the Lord, which is the essence. Maharaj Parikshit listened to the glories of the Lord consistently for 7 days without a break. And by doing that, he attained pure spiritual consciousness, so much so that at the end, Sukadeva Goswami was actually instructing him about getting ready to achieve the spiritual world by saying, do not fear the process of changing your body, because he was meant to be bitten by a snake bird, a Taksaka, a very powerful snake bird, not just an ordinary one. The king of all snake birds, whose poisons was just like liquid fire. And he's instructing him on how to prepare himself to leave the body. But it's not really for Maharaj Parikshit, it's for us. Because Maharaj Parikshit had already attained complete detachment from the material body. Sometimes it's understood. See, sometimes you also see when you work, sometimes you forget about your body. You become so absorbed in what you're doing that the fact that your body is there and working doesn't even become noticeable. And sometimes, of course, when you go under certain operations, some surgical operation which is very severe, they give you some kind of anesthesia. And that numbs the body, numbs the whole body, and then you don't feel any pain during the operation. But the body's still there, although there is no awareness of the body. When you go to sleep at night, you also lose awareness of your physical body, and you float through the world in your subtle body, going into the dream world, and there sometimes you adopt another body. But in any case, there are many examples of how one can forget even the awareness of one's body, even while they're still in the body itself. Sometimes you see that devotees chant and dance in kirtan, and they get so enthusiastic that they forget about their body and just start becoming absorbed in the holy name. And that absorption, and even though they may even have physical difficulties or pains or anything, it all goes away during the holy name. But when you stop, then it all comes back, right? So sometimes we say, don't stop. Of course, that may not be practical, but the point is that there are many examples of how we lose consciousness or awareness of the body and even the feelings of the body, the happiness and the pains that are being applied to the physical body. So when one is absorbed fully in devotional service, meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord and executing devotional service, they become unaware of everything, even in whatever is going on around them in the material world. So that means that they're actually in transcendental consciousness. So we see that done in a material way. That's not transcendental consciousness, that's just some obliviousness to the material body. But on the spiritual platform, then we understand, yes, that losing that awareness of the material body is the actual stage of realization of one's constitutional position as a spiritual being. So the Pandavas, they had gone back to Godhead in the same bodies that they were living on the earth. There's a special gift given to them by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they attained the spiritual world. We mentioned how even today, when people, certain great saints and sages who obtain perfection in spiritual life, when they leave their body doesn't even deteriorate like an ordinary body does. The same body will maintain its original state of existence, although it's not functioning. The body itself does not deteriorate. There's a couple examples in the Christian tradition. There was one great saint, her name was Saint Teresa of Avila in Portugal. And when she died, her body didn't deteriorate. And it stayed like that for 400 years. Not even a slightest amount of deterioration in her body. So, of course, after 400 years, they thought this body must be very special, so they start cutting it up and selling different parts to people and made a business out of it. But that was a sad affair. But actually, her body was, and then of course we have others examples. If you go to, Tirupati, and you see the body of Ramanujacharya encased in resin there, you can actually see, though, this is Ramanujacharya. And his body is just the same form of it was when he was personally present. So that is available. Even now you can see that in Tirupati, in the Sri Rangam temple. So we see that this material body becomes spiritualized when the soul is energized in its devotion to Krishna. And then the whole material body is no longer material anymore. It actually takes on the quality of spirituality. And that means no deterioration. But in the spiritual world, you get another body, which is your actual body, your eternal body, the body that exists as your constitutional nature to serve Krishna in the spiritual world. So the whole process is being very summarized here. Prabhupada doesn't make so many points, but he emphasizes that we stay fixed in devotional service under the disciplinary actions of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the guide by which one can elevate their consciousness from the material to the spiritual. The instructions of the spiritual master are the foundation by which one moves forward to the platform of self-realization, and then ultimately full God realization. Those instructions are non-different than the instructions coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, they are the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, one who hears regularly and tries to understand and applies very carefully according to the instructions given can stay on the spiritual platform simply by meditating on and absorbing oneself in the instructions of the spiritual master. But there are so many instructions given by the spiritual master. Sometimes we see, well, what is the most important instruction? The most important instruction was asked to Srila Prabhupada when he was here. He wanted the devotees who asked him, what is your most important instruction? And he very clearly said to chant 16 rounds on beads every day of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He made the point on beads every day. So he emphasized that this chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the most important of all instructions. Why? Because it's the most powerful, it's the means by which one elevates their consciousness from the material to the spiritual. When you're in kirtan, you're not in the material world anymore. As long as your consciousness is focused on the kirtan. Of course, sometimes we're in the kirtan, but we're not in the kirtan. So we have to hear very nicely as the chanter chants, and the chanter has to chant very clearly the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now we have to be very carefully to chant very clearly. The sound of the Maha Mantra has to be pronounced according to how it's given in the scriptures. When Srila Prabhupada was here, there was one very senior devotee. His name was Vishnu Jan Maharaj. And he was known for his kirtan. In fact, he was Kirtan Maharaj. He would do kirtan all the time. He would go out on Harinam and do from 10 to 12 hours a day outside doing kirtan, playing the mridanga and singing various melodies. He became very much known as a kirtan acharya. And after some time, he started to chant the Maha Mantra differently. And Srila Prabhupada picked up on it and called him in his room one day. He said, "What is this Ramo?" "It's not Ramo, it's Rama." He said, "Try to understand, it's not a Bengali mantra. It's a Sanskrit mantra. So it's Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare." He said, if we continue to do this, this will destroy our whole society. He said that. So I was listening to the kirtan today, and I was singing, I was hearing a lot of Ramos. Why do we chant Ramo? Because now we somehow or other are not listening to the mantra itself. And even the chanter sometimes is chanting Ramo. But Ramo, what is Ramo? It's just like maybe somebody's name. Rama, it's actually Rama. You chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's very important we do that carefully, because Srila Prabhupada was very strong, and he strongly chastised Vishnu Jan Maharaj for using Ramo instead of Rama. And he said, be careful not to do that. And of course, if you go to Bengal, Bengalis, they change all the A's to the O's. And that's where it started from Bengal. And now it's filtered throughout our whole society. Devotees are chanting Ramo all the time. We have to be conscious of the fact that the mantra should be chanted according to how it's given. And then the efficacy of the mantra will have effect. So someone might say, well, we know that Krishna's Bhava Hi Janardana, what is it, Bhava Grahi Janardana? Well, he understands what I'm saying, so even if I say it wrong, it doesn't matter, because Krishna knows my heart. Because he takes the essence, and that's true, but Prabhupada emphasized that still we should follow the principles. Just like even we chant, someone asked, Vrindayai Tulsi Devai Priyai Kesavasyacha Vishnu Bhakti Pranidevi Satchavachai Namaho Namaha. So someone asked, well, she's Krishna Bhakti. Why do we say Vishnu Bhakti? Yeah, right? She doesn't, she's Vrindavan. Tulsi Maharani is Vrinda Devi in Vrindavan. So why do we say Vishnu Bhakti Pranidevi? Because it says that in the Shastras. The Shastras say Vishnu Bhakti. So when Prabhupada was asked about that, he says, you can't change the Shastras. We have to follow the Shastra. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was glorifying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there was one verse, it said Mukti Pade. And he didn't like it. He said he wanted to refer to Lord Chaitanya as Bhakti Pade instead of Mukti Pade. And when he did, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you can't say that. You can't change the Shastras. The Shastras say Mukti Pade. Although Bhakti Pade might be more correct according to the tattva that's being described. But whatever it says in the Shastras, you have to follow. In other words, if the mantras are written in a certain way, there's a reason why. And even though it may seem less connected to the definition, still we have to follow. So in the same way, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I hear devotees chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ramo Rama, Hare Hare. There's a Ramo and a Rama in the same part of the mantra. There's a few Ramas and a few Ramas there. So whatever the reason is, it's not a reason. So we should be very careful. I'm only emphasizing that because Srila Prabhupada really took issue with that directly with one of his senior disciples, and very strongly emphasized that we avoid chanting Ramo. So that goes all the way back. I remember one time I was leading a kirtan it was Mangalarti in Mayapur. It was a Mangalarti in the morning, Mayapur. And there was one lady there, she was ferocious. She would make sure that everybody chanted Rama, even the Bengalis. And so when she would hear them chant Ramo, she would chastise them. I mean, really. She was just some Western lady who was really fixed on the idea that nobody should chant Ramo. We try that in Bengal. It's pretty hard. So she was always ready, and she's listening. So I was leading the Mangal Arti. And so I was chanting, and I was very much aware that she was there. And so I was chanting very carefully Rama, not to get into the Bengali response of Ramo. So at the end of the kirtan, I'm walking and she's coming directly towards me. And I'm thinking, oh God, here I go. I'm going to get chastised. And she runs up to me and says, Maharaj, thank you for not chanting Ramo. I felt relieved. Got some credit. So it's I travel all around and do kirtan in many places around the world, and so many devotees are chanting Ramo. But Prabhupada was very strong about that, because he said it is a Sanskrit mantra, not a Bengali mantra. It has to be followed very carefully. So here, it kind of leads into the whole idea that when we execute the process, we have to execute the process very carefully, according to the rules and regulations given by the spiritual master, which is the foundation by which all success in devotional service goes. The more we learn the instructions of the spiritual master, and the more we follow them accordingly, the more we get Krishna's mercy. Because the spiritual master, in this case, is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, who's not only a spiritual master, he's the founder, Acharya of the Hare Krishna movement, which means that whatever he delineates or designates or tells us to do, if we follow that, we are actually connecting ourselves with the entire parampara. Because Srila Prabhupada is the present link in the parampara. And when we follow that very carefully, and therefore we have to know the instructions of the spiritual master. This is one of the things that is most important, because there's two types of instructions in the spiritual master. There is general instructions and specific instructions. And then when you take those instructions, you divide them again into two categories. One is practical directions and spiritual knowledge. So he gives both. So in the general and specific, sometimes a devotee will get instructions from their spiritual master directly. And one is considered fortunate if the spiritual master tells him, well, I want you to do this service, or I want you to carry out this particular activity. That is considered special mercy. But then again, many of us don't get that specific instruction from our spiritual master. So the general instructions are there in his Vakya, which comes in the form of his lectures or in his books, and his conversations. All of these things are all part of the understanding of how we should learn. And if you listen to Srila Prabhupada, some of his more remote types of discussions with his devotees in terms of room conversations and morning walks, he says things he doesn't say in his books, which are specific to a particular situation that goes on. And therefore, sometimes it appears to be contradictory from what is in his books or what he has said at another time. And sometimes that causes devotees to get a little confused. Well, Prabhupada said this and this time, and he said this same thing referring to the same situation at another time. Therefore, Prabhupada said, whatever's in my books is the foundation of everything you can follow. He said, I put everything in my books. But we could also learn practical knowledge, which he also gives in his day-to-day discussions with his devotees. Like sometimes Prabhupada will speak about just the Indian culture, or even the history of India. He speaks a lot about the history of India. Or he'll speak about his own personal life. Or he'll speak about some specific thing, like he gave a whole long discussion on money one time. It was a morning walk. He just talked about currency, the falsity of paper currency, the value of real precious metals as being the foundation for real wealth. He gets into these, it might be something that is parallel or supportive of devotional life, but not directly. So there's a lot of instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave in a practical way that is very helpful in the execution of our devotional service. So the more we learn the instructions of the spiritual master, the more we can avoid offenses. Just like I see, of course devotees are aware here, but many devotees around the world I see, when we sit in large groups, and sometimes someone has to walk through the groups because it's very tight. It says if you step over a person, whether you step over their leg or any part of their body, it's an offense. You can't step over a person at any point because the soul is in the body and you're stepping over a living entity in that sense. So a lot of devotees don't know that, and they just walk over each other just to get from one place to another. So, but that's a practical thing, but still it has an effect. And if we don't avoid these small little offenses, these things start to accumulate, and then sometimes we find we struggle in our Krishna consciousness. So therefore, there's, as Srila Prabhupada would use the example, when in a courtroom, if a person is being tried for a particular crime, and they might make their plea saying, well, my dear honor, your honor, my dear judge, I didn't know it was a crime. And Prabhupada said, the judge will say, ignorance is no excuse. Material energy is like that too. People suffer in the material world because they don't know how to live according to a way to avoid the suffering in the material world. And therefore they get trapped many times or do the wrong thing based simply upon ignorance. So therefore Srila Prabhupada took so much time, so much effort, and even went into a personal exchange with many devotees just to make clear all of the principles that he wanted to teach. So we would have everything. And sometimes people say, well, did Prabhupada give everything? When you listen to his lectures and when you read his books and you hear from his devotees, you find he covered every subject. Every subject. Even the highest subjects in Krishna and Sri Vrindavan down with his intimate associates in spontaneous loving devotional service. Prabhupada covered everything. And that we were challenged sometimes that people say, well, I have to go outside to get more. Prabhupada didn't give us everything. I have to go to this other Babaji or this other, self-realized person who sits on the banks of Radha Kund to get the complete understanding. But Bhakti Taru Maharaj, all glories to Srila Bhakti Taru Maharaj, he very carefully made a presentation explaining in detail how Srila Prabhupada gave everything. How he gave everything. There's no need to go anywhere else to get any kind of knowledge that you might need in order to execute devotional service. Everything's there in Srila Prabhupada's books. Of course, some of his disciples are writing books based on his books, but that is also our tradition. Just like whatever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the Goswamis took that knowledge and wrote books on it, just like the Shikshastakam pairs. Those 8 verses comprise the entire essence of pure devotional service, from all the way from the beginning, all the way up to the highest point of spontaneous loving service to Krishna and Vrindavan in the mood of Srimati Radharani. In those 8 verses. And Lord Chaitanya only wrote, that's the only thing he ever wrote, was those 8 verses. But those 8 verses comprise everything. And the Goswamis study those verses, especially Rupa Goswami and also Jiva Goswami, and expanded that knowledge into so many other books based on these same teachings in all levels of devotional service. So Prabhupada said that is the duty of the disciples, to write books based on whatever their spiritual master said, without changing, but maybe using different language in order to communicate this knowledge according to time, place, and candidate. When we see that, we have that here. Many devotees who are part of Radha Gopinath temple are taking Srila Prabhupada's books and the statements of their spiritual master, expanding on them and keeping the same essence without changing the essence, and giving more detail on explanation by which one can practice devotional service according to the level of mentality that they can understand. That's preaching. That's preaching. So that's also a responsibility for the disciples to hear from their spiritual master, take that knowledge and explain it in different ways in lectures, and also to write about it. And therefore, more and more knowledge comes out in a very clear and very, what's the word? Thorough way that we're, even if you look at it from different angles of vision, you'll see the essence according to how it's explained. So, therefore, I wanted to make that point that the knowledge coming from the spiritual master is the foundation by which we do everything. Understand everything. Even Prabhupada, just like it says, what's that? Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Akya Ana Koriya Mani As. That the words of my spiritual master are like my nourishment, my foodstuffs. I don't have to go anywhere else. Ana Komino Mani As. I am fixed on those instructions of my spiritual master. This is my life, this is my foodstuffs, this is the essence of my existence. Everything is there in the instructions of the spiritual master. But it takes some study, it takes some continuous contact with those instructions to clarify and to understand and learn how to apply in each and every circumstance. And when we do that, then that is perfection in devotional service. There's so much to learn. Even whatever Prabhupada gave us, we can't even exhaust in many lifetimes. Just like when we were in New Vrindavan, I was there for many years in New Vrindavan, and there was this particular time where there was certain changes in the execution of the activities of devotional service, the practical activities. start getting into more of a combination of other traditions using some of their worship principles and incorporating them into bhakti. So devotees were sitting in the dark in the morning and chanting their rounds in complete darkness, with only little candles on different places, these little tiny votive candles lighting up the sides. And the idea was that through this dark, we should chant the holy name silently. No one could chant loudly. It was all silent. So this was an idea that came up. And then we were thinking, this looks pretty good. And a lot of devotees liked it. I even tried it. But then after a while, we saw that it wasn't working so good. But at the same time, devotees started to explore deeper Srila Prabhupada's instructions, and they came up. And Prabhupada actually said something, and he said, when you sit in the darkness and you try to meditate, you fall asleep. And the devotees you could hear a few mantras that were mixed in with the other mantras. It was called the sleep mantra. That keeps other people awake at night sometimes. If you know what I mean. So, Hare Krishna. So this it was like that. But when we first began doing that, we hadn't heard anything about whether it was correct or not. And we thought it was innovative, and it seemed to have a certain flair to it. And when it was initially instituted, it seemed to be nice. But then again, we saw all the flaws in it. Then we realized Prabhupada said, don't do it. But nobody understood Prabhupada's instructions until somebody found in one conversation, one lady was telling Prabhupada about that type of meditation. Prabhupada said, you'll simply sleep, that's all. And he was right. So this is an example how sometimes the remote instructions of Srila Prabhupada come to surface only when a certain situation becomes a deviation. But we have to make sure that we very carefully understand Srila Prabhupada's guidance for us in the practical way. And as we mentioned, there is the general instructions that we don't get, and that means we have to hear and read the books, and then specific instructions, practical instructions. Prabhupada gave us on how to do things, how to pay obeisances, how to greet each other, just general etiquette. That's also there in Prabhupada's instructions. So everything is there. And especially in the pronunciation of the mantras, it's very important. His Holiness Gopinath Swami Maharaj has written a book in 2009. It's called Pronounce It Correctly. It's a Sanskrit terminology he uses, which I don't remember the actual terminology. But he delineates all of our different worship services, both in the morning and the evening, along with different mantras we chant, and shows that many times we are not pronouncing correctly. So in the year 2009, the GBC devotees got a little bit intolerant that after so many years, devotees were still not pronouncing the mantras right. And so this was commissioned, and Maharaj wrote this book, and showing how we should pronounce the different mantras. Just like, I'll give you another example. Tulasi. We say, Tulasi Maharani, right? But what is two lasis? Two lasis is you have one lasi and then somebody says you want a second lasi? Okay, well, we'll have two lasis instead of just one lasi. But it's not tulasi. It's tulasi or tulsi. You can make it easy, just say tulsi. But the emphasis is on the I. The last is tulasi or Tulsi. It's not Tulasi. And Prabhupada, one time, he was talking to his devotees. He said, please don't call your spiritual master a cow. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindu. Guru. Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam. So the word is Vande Guru. Guru. What is it? Vande Guru Shri. Guru. G-U-R-O-H, right? Guru. It's Nande Vande Garo. Garo. The devotees were saying Garo and so everything. Prabhupada said, I know you mean well, but please don't call your spiritual master a cow. Hare Haraye Nama Krishna. Hare Hara Nama Krishna. Hare Hara Nama Krishna. All glories to Lord Shiva. So the Sanskrit language is quite precise, and a slight deviation can give a completely different meaning. And those who know Sanskrit, because sometimes people who are Sanskrit experts or scholars come to our temple and they think, what are these people chanting, you know? Gadadhar. And what was it? Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas. It's Gadadhar, Gadadhar, Gadahara, Gadadhar. He is the holder of the club, Gadadhara. Gadadhara. So we have a tendency to somehow, it's not so much in India. Usually in India people understand more, but in the West they make a mess of some of the mantras. It's really, you wonder where you are. What language is that? So, but therefore, that's why the GBC commissioned Maharaj to write this book, and he did. And we detailed very carefully how we chant. So when you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So it's Rama, Rama. You pull in the sound, Rama, Rama. And it's not like Rama, it's Rama. And you pull it in, Krishna, that's good, but Rama. It's like you pull in. It's called guttural sound. Those who know, the phonetics of language. So all of these, you might say, well, Maharaj, why are you harping on all these details? Let's get to the essence. But these things are there as a support in our execution of devotional service, and therefore we should follow very carefully. And when in the process of meditation, proper pronunciation increases the quality or the ability to meditate. When you're chanting clearly, the meditation becomes more, efficacious or more easily available. When we don't chant clearly, it's hard to concentrate on the sound vibration. So it clearly means correctly also. Okay, so there's a little bit on the importance of following carefully the instructions of the spiritual master as the foundation for the execution of devotional service, which leads to ultimately what we call transcendental consciousness. Any questions or comments? Criticisms? Suggested retractions? Suggested additions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the class about especially putting emphasis on the pronunciation. So I was wondering about this Tulasi.
Tulasi.
Yes, sir.
Vrindayai Tulasi Devai.
So actually it is la word is full. So it will be actually pronounced as Tulasi. But when we say Tulsi, la word is pronounced only half.
So Tulsi is not correct.
I think so, because
so it's
Tulasi is complete.
Tulasi.
Yes. Not Tulasi, but Tulasi.
Tulasi.
Yes.
Tulasi.
So when we pronounce Tulsi, La is half, not full.
Oh, so that's not correct.
Yes.
Okay.
I felt that.
There goes my whole program. So to get it exactly right is going to be very difficult then. So say it again, what is the actual correction?
Tulasi.
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 Not Tulasi.
Yeah, not Tulasi.
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 Okay, thank you. Vrindaya Tulasi Devai. Is that it? Okay. Thank you. Okay, write that down. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. As you said that we cannot change the scriptures. Similarly, for us, Srila Prabhupada's words are like they are scriptures. They are his ecstasies. And you also mentioned that acharyas, they write the commentary as per the time, place, and circumstances. So many of the Srila Prabhupada's some sentences which appears to be not applicable in current scenario, because there are a lot of changes in the social system after Srila Prabhupada. Then how should we see that?
Well, people say that what Prabhupada said when he was here is not applicable now because the social and political environment has shifted and mentalities and people have also have altered. No, therefore, it's the duty of the disciples and followers who are present to understand clearly the message given by their spiritual master and explain that same knowledge without changing the essence, according to time, place, and circumstance. Yeah. There's one, I forgot, one devotee, he's written a whole book, one Prabhupada disciple, taking something that Prabhupada wrote and making it more, what we say, understandable to the common people. I think that we see that here. We have preachers who are part of Radha Gopinath who are doing that also. Because to reach people where they are without changing the essence is really a great ability. It takes real clear understanding of the essence and at the same time how best to present that essence in a way that is understandable. Just like, I don't know, what would be an example? Rather than telling people not to follow the four regulative principles, explain to them what is the meaning of the four regulative principles and how it benefits them, rather than saying, well, you can't do these four things and then leave it at that. I mean, Prabhupada did that, but that was up to us to understand and then also apply. But then there was books written about that to explain what they're called the four principles of freedom, the four principles of knowledge, the four principles of detachment, the four regulative principles of execution of devotional, and so there's different terminologies used. So according to your audience, just like I was just talking last night to a group of people online, how in some countries, I won't mention the countries, you can't mention the four regulative principles because they'll get up in the middle of your lecture and walk out. I mean, seriously. These are Western countries, obviously. They'll get up and they won't want to hear how no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling. So in these countries, we don't even mention them. But we wait till people become more attached to the whole process of hearing, chanting, associating, and then we gradually introduce these things according to people who are more already committed to the practice. Prabhupada also did that. He didn't give everything at the beginning. He slowly gave it according to how we could to accept it. So that's an art. It's not everybody can do that. You had a question? No? Oh, okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.